videos and the audio is not.
Okay.
So what to tell you when the audio is.
Okay, the Parma Heights Mayor's Caucus will come to order on Monday, February 22nd, 2021 at 6:31 p.m. Present are all of council, our clerk Florence Bowden, Director of Law Picorni, Director of Finance Katie Iaconis, and we will start with our Finance Director, and then Chief Scharschmidt from the Parma Heights Police Department is here with us as well. So Katie, would you like to start, or do you want to start with the police chief?
Sure. Well, one thing, since the mayor was unable to be here, he asked if we would mention a resolution he would like council to consider in 2 weeks, and Mr. Picorni can explain what that is.
This information just came in from Senator Brown's office late last week. This is a resolution supporting the Direct Support for Communities Act that will provide additional funding, federal funding, to municipalities, but also to other entities, but primarily for the city, for lost revenue and increased cost as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a bill that was just introduced in the Senate, U.S. Senate, and Senator Brown asked that the city consider passing a resolution supporting the passage of this bill. So it's in front of you. I guess the mayor would ask for one reading on the resolution at the next meeting if that's something that you would consider. And I guess I would answer any questions if you have them.
Does council have any questions for Director Picorni? Seeing none, are there any objections to suspension of the rules? No? Okay. Councilman?
I did have a question, and I don't know if this is for Mr. Picorni or for Ms. Iaconis. You had mentioned, Mr. Picorni, that this is going to be for lost revenue, but we don't have a revenue sheet of it for 2020, so do you have?
Well, this is
I'll let you answer.
if there were to be any extra federal funding available. This is just a resolution of support to disperse more to local governments for lost revenue, meaning from payroll taxes and things of that nature. Whereas the CARES funding was a separate type of funding mechanism. So, and I do have a revenue report for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from City Council?
Thank you.
You're welcome. And now we will move into the 2021 budget. Before we start, we want to let members of the audience to know that if this Mayor's Caucus is not completed by the time our council meeting starts at 7 o'clock p.m., we will stop this meeting in time for our council meeting and then reconvene after our council meeting and continue budget discussions. So Director Iaconis, would you like to begin?
Yes. So I gave you a handout. This was some information requested several weeks ago. They'll also get more in depth when we have the fire chief, assistant fire chief out here who can talk a little bit about some of her other requests. So in front of you, you're going to see the overtime totals from 2018, 19, and 20 for the police, fire, and service departments. As you can see, we had a very dramatic decrease in 2020 and foresee the budget to be about the same, if not less, for 21. And then you will see below that our total budgets for 18, 19, and 20, and then the percentage and dollar makeup for each of those departments of the total. And then on the other pages, Council President had requested for police, fire, and service to see their gross wages for 2019 and 2020. They're just listed by position. And then you will see in the second column how much of their gross was just overtime. Okay? So if you have further questions or want more information on this, we can get more in depth at the next meeting or any time in between.
Councilman Stivoli?
I did have a question, Katie.
Yes.
This the second page or third page where it lists out the overtime, is that subtracted from that first number? Or?
It's included in the growth.
Okay, so I'm not adding
No
that
adding.
on top. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I think we touched briefly on the fire department at the last meeting. We really have mostly personnel costs associated with the police line items. It was passed last year in anticipation of a bit of a restructuring. Because of COVID, that did not occur. However, that is budgeted the same for 2021. The chief would like to explain that at all or answer questions in regards to staffing. If anyone has any.
Director, can you please repeat the question for City Council?
Does anyone have questions about the restructuring, or do you want the chief to go over the restructuring again, since it was a year ago?
Chief, why don't you, why doesn't the chief review the restructuring again for council? It's been a while, so.
Yeah, it has. As Director Caucus said, I discussed this last year with council as far as bringing in lieutenants restructuring, and that's still my goal, is to promote a administrative lieutenant and a detective bureau lieutenant. And then through attrition, the captain in uniform patrol would become a lieutenant's position as well. So right now, we're still working on some ordinances on our part and dealing with the unions and trying to set up a test here at some point here fairly soon. I think it's certainly going to make us a stronger department. There's a lot that we're dealing with policies, including the Ohio Collaborative and training. Training's something I want to take to the next level, and I feel like if I have a lieutenant to assist me in that regard would be really a benefit, and I think that every officer in this department would see the benefit of restructuring.
Just for the sake of our newer council members, would you go over the current structure that you have in place right now? Is it 2 captains?
It is 1 captain. So there's myself as chief. I have 1 captain, Captain Brown. He's been in the position for approximately 12 years. I have 8 sergeants. I have a detective bureau sergeant. I have an administrative sergeant. And I have 6 patrol sergeants, 2 on each shift. 2 on day shift, 2 on afternoon shift, 2 on night shift. And then I have 3 detectives currently, and then I have 15 officers, 5 on each shift right now. There's a total of 28 officers with our department, sworn officers right now.
And at one time you had 2 captains, and that's been eliminated as well, correct? The 1 position.
That is correct.
Does council have any questions regarding the restructuring for the chief?
No.
Chief, I know I brought this up previously, but will there be something that outlines in your absence who would be the acting chief? Would that be something written in the contract or in the policy?
Probably policy, more so policy. In my absence, who would be the acting chief, right?
And when they get the acting chief, is there some sort of a pay increase, a temporary work
Correct.
level pay increase?
That
Okay.
is correct, yes.
Okay. Mhm.
So most of the other expenses you're going to see are related to healthcare, Medicare, pensions. There are several contractual services. You'll see that we have $30,000 budgeted. Chief is, that is part of the Police Chiefs Association, SEB, correct? And a few other.
Correct. I have a list of those.
If you'd like to hear.
Yes, LexisNexis, there's the Ohio Chiefs of Police membership dues. There is the Hawk Analytics for cell phones for our Detective Bureau. IACP, we use IACP for policies. There's TAC reporting, SEB is included in that. TAC mobile service support, and there's also radio fees that we pay out for our radio fees as well. So those are all the administrative fees that we now put on one line item that for our operating cost.
Okay. And also what falls under the chief, at the bottom of the second page, safety. So it does have Director Burns as a part-time employee, but the clerks in the police department are part of safety. We also have our signal maintenance, traffic signal maintenance, which the police department takes care of, and then our dispatch, which would fall under police and fire, of course, is also under safety. So as of right now, we are not budgeting for an increase to dispatch services at this time. And I know that the chief had maybe a few capital requests for council to consider.
That's correct. So I just have three. We've pared this down, and there are three needs for our department, and the first one is vehicles. And in talking to Bob Toller, our chief mechanic, and I will say that he and Bob Morell and Eric, they've done a great job to keep our fleet as strong as it can be, but we certainly are in need of vehicles. So in talking to him and Jeff Krapina, he's our VMO, our vehicle maintenance officer. The need is for 4 uniform patrol vehicles and 1 detective bureau vehicle. The patrol vehicles are truly the priority, and the SEV vehicle is the biggest priority. We're in need of a SEV vehicle right now. Our 4 SEV officers, SWAT officers, they take that vehicle to all the call-outs. So that vehicle's in need of replacement. That vehicle would also serve our patrol. The SWAT officers would drive that on shift. So that would, of course, help them with their call-outs and, of course, help the city with day-to-day operations. So that's the first capital. That is, again, the vehicles. And the cost from statewide Ford is about $58,000 for an SUV, and that's fully outfitted for vehicles.
Can you repeat that one?
$58,000
58?
is the cost, fully
Okay.
outfitted.
All right, thank
For
you.
a cruiser for our department. The detective bureau car would be less. We just had a seizure that I made an undercover car. If I can hopefully try and find another possible seizure, we could make that a detective bureau car. So really the need is patrol. I can't stress that enough. And then the second capital improvement is portable radios. We started a project, if you remember, several years ago, and unfortunately due to COVID last year, we did not purchase radios. There was also one other year that we skipped. So we're in need of about 21 portable radios. They're about $4,000 each, and that comes to roughly $85,000. And if we can't work out a plan for portable radios, Steve Green has suggested for batteries and components, it would be about $6,000 to upgrade some of the radios that we currently use. So vehicles are 1, portable radios are 2, and 3 is body cams. In this climate that we're in, police accountability, transparency is very, very important. And we had hoped to possibly purchase body cams at some point. I know the state, they're considering a bill for all departments to have body cams, and there's some discussion that the state would pay for the body cams. If that doesn't happen, what we're considering is using the Justice Assistance Grant, that's the JAG grant, and putting in for body cams next year to try and assist for that purchase. Right now we have dash cams in every cruiser that we have on the road for patrol. Those are L3 is the company we use. So we would first look to L3 and their body cams. And there's several out there that are quality, but I would love to pair that up and keep that consistent with the dash cams and the body cams. So the rough cost for body cams is about $35,000. That's for $30,000 for 35 cameras. And the server associated with those body cameras is about $15,000. So it's a total of about $45,000 to outfit our entire department.
You said the server, you said?
That's correct.
Okay. I just had a quick question about the body cameras. Do you have someone who is going to be responsible for redaction of those and all of that?
That would tie into the promotions with the administrative lieutenant.
Okay, so one of your lieutenants would be responsible for that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. And that is a lot of work.
Yes, yes.
Certainly very important. Yes.
Chief, could you repeat the cost for the server, please?
Yeah, the server is $15,000.
$15,000, thank you.
You're welcome.
That includes storage for the 15, or is there an additional cost for storage?
There's not an additional cost for storage. So some of these companies, they have what's called evidencetech.com that you can utilize for storage as well. So the cost isn't great for these, but it is a lot of man hours, as
Right.
Councilman Gallo said, to do all the redactions and such.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Rounds?
Chief, is there a limit to the Justice Assistant Grant money that you can apply for?
Yeah, there is, and that actual grant is the one that we had, and I do have a list of the grants that we've applied for. That one is, I believe that's 40,000. That is the grant that we were outfitted new tasers with. So we have had success with the JAG grant. We had applied for cruisers, 2 brand new outfitted cruisers, and unfortunately we got about $10,000, but we made the effort. And when I hand out the annual report for all of you, which will be about March 1st, unfortunately it wasn't done. It takes some time to get all the statistics from last year, put that in a report. I'm going to have all the grants that we've applied for and ones we were successful and not successful with. So I want you to see just how much we're doing to try and better our department. So we have had some success with the JAG, and I think we could again with body cameras, but it would be great if the state stepped up and purchased those. We can then apply for other needs with the JAG. But to answer your question, I think it's 40,000.
That's the limit.
That's correct.
Chief, for the portable radios, you had mentioned, and Katie, you might know this, were they in last year's budget for your department, the radios, and then they got pushed off because of COVID?
No, I believe last year we issued debt for the tasers, and then we were reimbursed through that grant, so that was paid off last year. We did not budget for radios last year. And we can always change appropriations throughout the year if council wants to take time to, reassess as we get a little bit further into the year. We could always add capital then.
Of these 3 items, Chief, which one is your top priority, the 4 cruisers?
They're listed in order, vehicles.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is in order by,
That
okay.
is correct. Vehicles are the number one need. Radio second, then body cams. We're still navigating as to who may pay for those.
Okay, and you might have said it, I'm sorry, I might have missed it,
No
but,
problem.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're in order. Thank you.
Council have any other questions regarding these 3 items? Okay. Director, is there anything else?
I am done with the police.
I just briefly want to touch on personnel. So we did make a recent hire. It's the first lateral hire in the history of our city. He's a CMHA officer. He's been on about 2.5 years, so we're really excited. He took a conditional offer of employment, and he starts March 8th. So that adds to our manpower.
Are you at full staffing now, Chief?
We're not. I hope to give an entry-level test soon, and then I'm going to apply for laterals soon as well, another round of laterals. I hope to do that soon, within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
How many do you anticipate hiring this year?
2 to 3, possibly.
And do you foresee any retirements coming up?
No, there are none.
Okay. Council have any questions regarding staffing?
So just wanted to point out again, on March 1st, I'll have that annual report. Please, if there are any questions, I mean, as you know from past years, it'll give you certainly a good insight as to what we went through last year. It was a difficult year for all of us with COVID. Certainly for us, a number of change in protocols, and we can't stop what we do day to day. I think about 25% of our staff had COVID. Fortunately, every case we worked through it, and no major issues. Certainly a difficult year for law enforcement. I would compliment my officers for the job they did, stayed focused on our residents and the job right in front of them. So I'm proud of what they did. It's a good product, and I thank you for your support.
Thank you.
And one more question, Chief, and this might open the door for a few questions. As far as overtime goes, do you think you'll stay within the number that is budgeted?
Yeah, I think we'll be close. I do. I think if we can add some staff, which we've already started to do, it's certainly helpful. I would add another officer on afternoon shift. We have higher minimums on afternoon shift, so to add that additional officer is certainly important. And I do think that certainly it's realistic, and I do think we will certainly do our best to stay within that number, absolutely.
I'll add, I think they were really on pace to be at budget or under budget. However, with COVID and how many employees were out sick, definitely led to overtime. And also, when there were some protests going on, we had quite a few extra officers on duty who were also attending. So this year, barring everything, I think that it is a realistic goal for the police department.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Director Iaconis. To add some staff, I certainly don't foresee, we had 69 call-outs, which was by far a record for SEP. We also had the mobile field force, who they debuted May 30th, the riots in Cleveland. So we had 7 officers, which were in a regional contract. We didn't have any demonstrations or protests in our city, but we were a part of a number of them in this area. So that was certainly an increase in overtime that we won't hopefully have this year. And the COVID, certainly with people out, we were filling shifts.
Councilwoman?
Chief, I have a couple questions. I'm fairly new to this, as you know. I see from 2018 to 2020, you did lower your overtime cost by quite a bit. But when you look at the 2020, I just don't understand how we can have a sergeant make more than the average Parma Heights resident makes in their job just in overtime. How do you get those numbers down? That's one of your sergeants made almost $50,000 in overtime last year. That is, it's unfathomable to me that a person can make $50,000 in overtime.
So when you look at that number for that particular sergeant, there's 2 sergeants on the afternoon shift that don't care to work night shifts, so that sergeant picked up that overtime. So that could have been spread out had they had first dibs at that overtime. Now, sergeant overtime is always, it's always a higher number because we don't use OICs. We don't have, if a sergeant calls off, the senior patrolman in some cities steps up and they assume responsibilities of the shift. I'm a big believer, my sergeants are the strength of our department. To have that sergeant there every day certainly makes me feel better at night or on the weekend because I know the quality of that person. So I think those sergeants, they're so important to our operation. So Sergeant Phil is always something that's a bit of a higher number.
So would it be, in a restructure, would it be better to have 2 extra sergeants, 2 more sergeants? Because then you're paying them straight time instead of time and a half, that our bottom line would be less than overtime and regular salary. Is that what you're looking for in your restructuring? Or not quite so much that you just need help in different departments?
The latter, help in different departments.
Okay.
Help making this department better with training, helping this department in other areas.
Okay.
That's really the goal of the lieutenants.
So as I said when we started, I'm new at this, so it's not uncommon in police departments to have this type of overtime numbers, percentages. That in the city of Parma, 9 people are making $50,000 in overtime.
Not all that uncommon. I talked to many area chiefs, not all that uncommon. I did not call chiefs last year. I have in my tenure as chief and got a feel for Brooklyn and Brook Park and Parma. We're not out of the norm. No.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
But not that there's always room for improvement, and
Right.
the chief is always looking for ways to be more efficient. So,
Absolutely.
we were just talking about this before we came in.
Well, and that was, I'm going to follow up with Councilman Walsh's question. If we were to run into problems or say reduce the amount of overtime that we budget for this year for your department, are you able to work and figure out ways to mitigate the overtime even further if we do reduce overtime?
Absolutely. I'm always looking to reduce that number. I know the situation here. I understand. When I took over as chief, one of the first things I did is a lot of the reports went right to the detective bureau. So what I did change was the patrolmen started following up on misdemeanors. I mean, our volume with felonies right now is high. So it's unrealistic for 3 detectives to follow up on all those misdemeanors and felonies. And that's where we ran into somewhat of a problem, and you're going to run into a burnout problem with these detectives. So I changed that, and the patrolmen now follow up on misdemeanors. I have better policemen, and they take statements, they collect video, they do all the things and put the case together, and it frees up my detectives for felony cases, and it reduces overtime. And I think you're seeing that in this number that's coming to fruition. So I'm always looking for ways, absolutely.
Council, have any additional questions for the chief? Chief, did you have anything else for us this evening?
No, that's it. I would just like to mention the Citizens Police Academy. We start March 24th. I still have several openings. You're all welcome to apply. We're excited to get started.
And Chief, council may end up scheduling follow-up budget meetings. Are you available over the next month, near the
Anytime.
beginning of the week? Okay.
Anytime. Thank you.
Okay, we can let you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to end this meeting for now, and in a few minutes, we're going to start our regularly scheduled council meeting, and then we'll come back to the caucus.
Since we have 2 minutes, do you mind, I do have one piece of information I wanted to bring up before next Monday's special meeting. So budgeted right now, we have $290,000 to pay down in our note issuance. So I'm asking, I have 2 different options on the table, and I'm going to have 2 pieces of legislation for you to review, and I would ask that you possibly do a first reading on both of them next week. One would be the option of going with a direct placement 15-year bond that doesn't require a bond rating. It's going to lock us in at a set rate rather than a variable rate, which we have to do each year. But then we're also going to hedge that by having the legislation ready to do a 1-year note should we not get any very favorable offers on our direct placement. So I know that's a little bit different than usual. Interest rates are very low right now, but with the volatility in the market, it may end up being a better idea for us to lock in at a 15-year. So I'll have both of those ready for the agenda. We can review them and go into more detail on Monday.
Thank you. And thank you again, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, City Council will, or I should say the Mayor's Caucus will reconvene at 7:58 PM. Present are all of Council, Law Director Picorni, Finance Director Iaconis, and Assistant Fire Chief Bernard. So I'm going to defer to Director Iaconis. Would you like to begin?
Yes, so on the second page of your budget, you're going to see the fire department. Here we have staffing levels that are considered adequate for the time being. So that would be 6 per shift, correct? And as you'll see, I have to give major kudos to Assistant Chief Bernard for the major cut in overtime from 2019 to 2020. Going from $650,000 to $313,000, half of that. But it also goes to show that when there are proper staffing measures, overtime does decrease dramatically. So the fire department's budget is also pretty straightforward, as well as the police department. We're budgeting $300,000 in overtime for this year, though the assistant chief has said he feels comfortable that we may come in below that number, correct?
Correct.
We they really don't have a lot of administrative costs. They have some training costs, gear, of course. We get a lot of PPE donated, thankfully. And also, safety falls under their department, and the share of dispatch as well. So if you'd like to share anything, I know that Council President had asked about some details regarding mutual aid and the number of runs.
Sure. And let me start off with thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and have all you here with me tonight. This is my first time addressing council, so bear with me. My 2021 capital expenses are very few, I would consider. Some of the major purchases is we're looking at purchasing what's considered a remount ambulance instead of purchasing new. Traditionally, in the past, we've always purchased new. We're looking at new creative ways in order to save the city money, but still get to the end result of having newer apparatus. So, to give you an example, like a new ambulance costs anywhere between $225,000, and you can go up to over $300,000 for a new ambulance. A remount ambulance is about half of that cost. And what I mean by a remount is on the back of every truck there on the ambulance, there's a box, and they basically take that off, and it's an aluminum box. So they sand it, they clean it, they completely remodel it, and then they put it on a new truck chassis. And so it's almost like a brand new truck, but it's half the cost. So we're looking at new creative ways in order to save the city money in the long run. Now, in regards to also the ambulance, we are also looking at purchasing what's called an EMS load system, and that includes a new stretcher and includes the rail system, which secures the stretcher to the base of the cot, so we meet today's standards. One thing I will tell you is we just recently put in for an AFG grant for that load system, so hopefully it would be minimal cost to the city if we do get awarded that grant. So fingers crossed, we're hoping that we do get awarded that grant in order to save the city additional costs. In 2020, we also applied for numerous grants, just like with the police chief. One of the grants we received, the city actually accepted in March of 2020, was the SAFER grant, which you're all aware of. It's $538,000 credit towards the city to help with staffing levels. We're hoping that we're going to start drawing on that here soon, and that'll help offset the cost and be additional revenues for the city. Some of the other grants we received were for new extrication tools, gloves, and numerous other EMS grants that we put in for. They're not huge grants, but every little bit helps in order to save the taxpayers some money. Now, as Director Iaconis said, staffing is where it's huge when it comes to overtime for us. In 2019, we were understaffed quite a bit. So once we have brought our staffing up, we're only one member short within the fire department right now. You can see by the numbers don't lie, and how dramatically that helps lower our overtime costs. And that's what my goal is to do, is to get our best bang for the buck, and staffing is where it is for us. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
The mutual, any of your
Oh,
statistics?
mutual aid, yeah, I can talk on that here. So for 2019, we had a total of 3,532 total runs for the fire department. Mutual aid received for 2019 was 111 runs. For 2020, our runs actually went down because of COVID a little bit. We had that huge dip probably in April. Everybody was afraid to go to the hospital, so our runs did dip down, but in June and July, we jumped something fierce, and we got extremely busy. So our runs for 2020 were 3,415. Mutual aid received was a little bit higher because we were a little bit busier with COVID runs. So our manpower was tied up a little bit longer on scene, because now we're required to wear certain PPEs, gowns, non-rebreather masks, goggles. They all have to be properly sanitized after each patient along with the ambulance. So our mutual aid received in 2020 was 239 runs.
So Chief, I'm going to go back to your capital requests. The remount ambulance, what is the estimated cost?
The estimated cost as of right now, we just started shopping around, and Director Patton was very helpful in finding suppliers for us. We're looking at between $100,000 and $120,000 for the remount. And as I said, the total cost for a brand new one, you're talking $225,000 and up. So it's close to being about half. Our last squad that we purchased, it was purchased on block grants in 2017, I believe. And that one was $262,000. And that one was brand new. But as I said, we're looking at different ways that we could save the residents money.
What do you think we could get for the ambulance we would be giving up, roughly?
Pardon me?
How much do you think we could get for the ambulance we'd be selling? And
You don't get there's not a large market for them, so sometimes you're just getting thousands.
Okay.
One of the last ones that we had, we took it and I made it into a sewer truck because the box is good, the truck is good, but you don't get much money for a used ambulance. So we were looking at even eventually talking to this vendor of possibly, even if we have to take some of our boxes
Right.
and have our boxes out on a remount on a new chassis. So
Yeah,
save us quite
we're
a bit.
exploring all options. So as the director said, we're looking at, instead of selling the ambulance because you don't get much for it, we're actually thinking about taking the box of that one that was from 2005, having the company completely refurb it and put that one on a new chassis. That way we could save some money.
Counselor?
When do you find out the results of the grant funding that might help offset all this?
The grant just ended, or the submission for the grant was February 9th. So unfortunately, they award in different phases, if you will. So unfortunately, if we don't get the first phase, I think the first phase will come out probably in June. I have to look at the details to be absolutely positive, but they come out in phases. So I'm not 100% sure, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman?
What is emergency pay? We have the salaries, and we have overtime, we have sick pay, sick incentive, longevity, and then this emergency pay. What is that? I don't know which one of you.
emergency responder pay, so the police, fire, and service departments, it's all part of their contractual payments they receive. I believe twice, is it
It's
split
twice a year. Yes,
into
ma'am.
two
So is that like
payments?
the 6% that?
Yes, ma'am.
On every call or whatever, you got, they get 6%, or how does that work?
It's for the total year, so whatever their annual salary is based off of, it's 6% off of that, and it gets paid out twice a year. But it's not 6%, it's 6% over the whole year. So it's 3%, I think it's May 1st, and 3% November 1st.
Okay.
And as Director Icona said, that's for police, fire, and service.
But this is just the fire number we're looking at?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It is contractual, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And also to mention, we are going to have likely one retiree in the fire department this year. We are in the process of calculating, it's a little bit fluid right now what that payout is going to be, but that will likely be added after the budget is passed, but you will be informed of what that amount will be.
Is that an officer that will be retiring, a lieutenant?
This is the chief of the department.
Oh, you're referring to the chief?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
okay. Any other retirements?
Not that I'm aware of. There's always talk, but nobody has come to me and said that they have an official date. Even the chief, I do not have an
Yeah.
official date.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's still pending.
Yes, ma'am.
We're working on calculations, trying to ballpark as close as we can get, but still waiting on an official notification from Chief Finneran.
Okay.
I have a question.
Councilman?
Katie, I don't know if this is for you or for the chief. Under the contractual service maintenance or service contracts, in 2020, it was 171,000. In 2021, it was 1,000. Why the discrepancy?
So initially, when we switched to the new accounting system,
Okay.
we've created a lot of these funds as we've gone along throughout the year, so that whole budget chunk was just popped into one line, and then
Okay.
it was spread out then amongst all the others as we created accounts.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
sorry, I know it's a little deceiving.
And then Chief, the cost of, or the approximate cost of the EMS load system?
They're approximately $48,000 each, and that includes, as I said, it includes a new cot and includes a rail system. In 2015, the state, or not the state, the federal government came out with standards for rollover protection for our patients and so on and so forth. So that would bring us up to the current standards. Any new apparatus that you bring into a fire department has to meet those today's standards, and if we don't, then we can be held liable.
And are these, is this like that power cot?
Yes,
that-
ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the power cots now, but it's an actual load system that, ties it down to the floor of the squad for security.
Would you mind explaining briefly the advantage of having the power cot to city council? Because they're very costly, but they cut down on injuries to your men. So would you go through that for city council?
Yes, ma'am. Well, actually, I got an example for you also. Late last year, New York Fire, one of their ambulances did not have a load system in it, and they were pulling a patient out, and the cot tipped over. The patient ended up hitting their head and unfortunately ended up passing away. They actually sued the department for, I think it was close to $500,000, and the city had to, pay a portion of that because of that liability. These new power cots completely take that out of the equation. Everything is automated and it's secure, so as soon as you lock the patient in, the system grabs it and loads the system into the back of the ambulance and secures it. Same thing when we get to the hospital, you push a button and the system comes out and securely places, the cot on the ground, so there's no chance of, because right now there's a hook system that we have to do, and you have to pull this lever, and then you have to make sure that the cot's properly angled so it doesn't fall. So there's a lot of, human error that can happen with our current system that these new power systems completely take out of that.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes,
Are you looking for one of these systems or two, or?
With the extreme cost of them, if we did not receive the grant, I was gonna have and stagger the cost, because it's too much to to absorb all at once. So what I was hoping is, obviously I'm hoping we do get the grant, so it's a minimal cost to the city, but if we don't, I would ask that we would get one this year for our front ambulance that's out the majority of the time, and then over the next 3 years, or the next 2 years, we would outfit our backup squad, and then our reserve squad.
This could be transferred to another?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, if we were to get a new remount or a new ambulance, the whole system comes out and you bolt it to the new ambulance.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chief, a while ago, Chief Finneran gave us a presentation regarding part-time firefighters, and he had estimated, he made a reference, and I think it was around, 75 part-time firefighters Parma Heights would need if we looked at doing something like that, and I think he's not coming because he's avoiding me tonight because I'm still waiting after 2 years for when he got those numbers, so. Any thought to that? Is that still something down the road, if we hit harder times, that the department would, I know it's a touchy subject with the union and everything, but something that's still actively being considered?
I don't ever rule anything out. That's one of the new things that I hope I bring a fresh breath of air to, my position in the fire department. I want to move our department forward. So I'm open to investigating any way I can save this city money. There is a lot of contention over part-timers. Some of the chiefs that I talk to that do have part-timers say it's basically almost like a cost neutral, because it's not like back in the day when I was taking fire tests, there were 300 and some people. Now you're lucky if in this last test we had 20. So us to find qualified personnel is even that much harder now than it ever has been. But why I say it's somewhat cost neutral is the amount of expenditures that we have to pay for, not only their fire gear, is their training to go into it. And then, as we just hired the 3 new firefighters that we have now, we stole, I don't want to say we stole them, but we hired them from part-time departments. So that money that part-time department invested into them for, $5,000 worth of gear and then training, and then for them to have, some of them have only stayed there for 3 months, it's hard to absorb that kind of cost and then not have anything long-term productivity show out of those part-timers. So that's where some of the chiefs that I talk to, they say, yeah, it's not saving me any money. So that's my concern for part-timers.
But it still never is out, not considered, okay?
No, yeah, I'm willing to do anything I can to work with the city, and, I mean, I'm here for one reason, it's to serve the residents, so.
Very good. And I'm sorry if this information was already given to us this evening, but are we doing laterals for fire as well?
Not that I'm aware of as of right now, but
Okay.
in my tenure as hopefully maybe the next chief, I would like to see something like that, yes. Obviously, I'm not going to turn down anybody that wants to transfer to our department. I'm willing to accept anybody that's willing to do a lateral. So I think for us to keep that door closed, it just ends up hurting us in the long run. So I'm definitely open to accepting that, definitely.
That could help, because it's hard
Yes, ma'am.
with the testing now, like no one's applying for these jobs anymore, so that could be a big help to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions about overtime?
I
Councilwoman?
commend you for getting it down to half. It was a very good job on your part. For whatever
I can't take
reason,
all.
for whatever reason it was, the numbers are down. And
Yeah,
that's a good
The
thing.
majority of it is we're very blessed that, we can have additional staffing. So as I said, in 2019, we were so shortly staffed, so our overtime hours were astronomical, as you could see from the numbers there. And as, we're only one person short right now, and then after the chief retires, if we hire another 2, we'll be at full staffing. So hopefully, our overtime will be very, very low.
And I have to give Matt a lot of credit. One thing that, Assistant Chief, he puts together a wonderful schedule that shows us where they're at full staffing, highlights days where there's automatically going to be overtime incurred because of the way they schedule their days off ahead of time. So it's a really great visual for us to see as we're budgeting and to help us realize the impact of staffing on, he's been having issues with the volume of his phone today.
That's okay, that's okay.
So he's definitely taken some things to another level as far as presenting to us, to the mayor, to the administration in the budgeting process. And we told you to restart, Matt.
I did. I'm sorry. I just have to turn it off all the time.
If you gotta take that.
No, sir.
So, yeah, we look forward to working with him more and see a difference in the department already.
Councilwoman?
So with the chief retiring, you said you're going to be down to, or you need 2, so are you looking to hire 2 more this year?
We're still in talks to possibly do that. We're down, as of right now, currently, we're down 1.
1, right.
And then when the chief retires, we'll be down 2. So there have been discussions. I would hope that we would get up to full staffing because, as you know, the overtime numbers don't lie. If we're short-staffed, that's where time and a half comes into a factor, and it just kills me on the overtime budget.
Okay.
This overtime number, I'm sorry, Councilwoman, were you done?
Yes.
Okay, this overtime number that is budgeted, do you feel that's good, you can stay within that?
If we're full-staffed, yes, ma'am.
Okay, if this were to be reduced even more, are you still able to find ways to stay within the number as long as you have full staffing?
I mean, all of my overtime costs are for staffing. I don't have additional, I've cut to the bare bone when it comes to, pretty much any kind of staffing. We're currently sharing a police secretary, so, and I'm okay with that in order to work things for the near future, so. Yeah, I'm always looking for ways that we can save money and reduce overtime costs and any kind of costs.
Councilman?
Director Iacono, there's a question for you, because I'm new at this budget stuff. When the police chief and when the fire department also asks for capital expenses, where does that come from?
But there, a lot of those are not in there yet. So until council gives approval, then we will include it in the budget. They'll be coming out of capital.
Is that on page 9 then? Where
They
that?
will be 4901. Or 4902, sorry. It always gets confused me of two. So 4902 is really the capital outlay. And that would be where we would budget for it. And once we start, I don't really think we did much in capital in 2020 because of COVID and the everything else. So we'll break that out into separate categories so that you know if it's a police vehicle purchase, fire vehicle, maintenance of facilities, things of that nature. Service vehicle, maybe, Yes.
So your 100, go on.
I was going to say, so you placed $100,000 there just for planning purposes now?
Yes, so we do know that, so above in 4901, this is where we're paying, there's a few lease payments that we're going to be paying off. That's where that's placed. This 100,000 really is a placeholder for capital. We know, and Director Patton can speak on it when he comes up, we do have quite a few property maintenance issues that need to be addressed amongst all of the facilities, including the fire and police station and the service garage. So that's just a start. That does not include if you were to approve any police vehicles or an ambulance or anything else. And like I had mentioned earlier, as we get further into the year, we can always go back and revise appropriations to add capital at any time.
So, because I'm learning.
Yeah.
If we're looking at, I mean, so far we've had 2 departments tonight have real requests, real needs that are very expensive, and I appreciate the grant writing that both departments do to seek any money outside of our budget that they can grab a hold of. But where on these 9 pages would, I mean, and there's other departments that haven't even spoken yet about their capital needs, right? So where is that money potentially sitting right now that we would move it into that fund, or?
So the general fund subsidizes pretty much every other fund. We have the SCMR, which is part of the street department. That is funded mostly from state highway tax, vehicle registration. That goes into SCMR, which is 2011 and 2021. We have to split a portion of what we receive. But that does not cover all of the costs of that department. So the general fund we have transfers out into SCMR, into capital, into parks maintenance, into the senior center, if need be, in order to fund those. So really a lot goes from the general fund into capital. And
so this really is about expenses, it's not about revenue.
This is all expenditure.
Yeah, okay.
So when we do appropriations and the legislation you'd be passing just expenditure legislation. I will get revenues to you. We're being extremely conservative on a lot of the estimates this year, only because we're a couple months, not even a couple months, into our tax collection. But yeah.
That helps, yeah.
So basically the general fund subsidizes every other fund, and those become part of appropriations that council approves, they're transfers out, and those are listed, so you would be approving them. So, for instance, our fund balance, I think in capital right now, what do I do with my sheet? My capital fund balance right now is 403,000. So that money's sitting in there. Say we needed to make a purchase that was 600,000, I would subsidize another 200 into capital from the general fund. Does that make sense? Kind of. But happy to sit down if you want to come in and talk through anything, just let me know.
Councilwoman Walsh, did you have a question?
Tom asked the same question I was going to ask, so we're good. Thank you.
Council have any other questions? It wasn't that bad.
No.
Well, thank you, Chief. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. You
Thank
did a
Thank
good
you.
job for your first time.
Thanks.
Very good.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. I'll get that phone call.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Patton.
Director Patton.
Okay, we have, service department's been fortunate the last 2 weeks, we hired 2 new employees. So that raised us to 13 service workers and 3 mechanics. Gives us a little more flexibility. I have several items that we had talked about over this past several years.
Director,
Yeah.
one moment, I'm sorry. There's 13 in total,
13 service workers,
okay?
3 mechanics, so
mechanics.
it's 16 total.
And you were at, prior to the 2 hires, you were at 11.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, sorry. Go on.
We have, our bucket truck is a 2003 that is aged, it's still running, we get it certified every year, it's costly, but it's seen its better days. I have looked around trying to see if we could get a good used bucket truck. They're hard to find because most people keep them like we have, wear them out, and when there's not much to be done with them, they sell them. So a new bucket truck is expensive, but it's over $170,000 for a truck. But it's got to be a truck that goes at least 40 feet in the air, and it has to be certified when you're putting people up in that bucket to keep them safe. The other item is the Bobcat. Bobcat is a 1999. The hydraulic pump has got low pressures on it. I'm not real, I use it, but I don't like using it in different conditions because I'm not positive how well everything will hold when I have people around and lifting things up in the air around it. So that's something else that we need to look at. And I'd say now, last year it was 70,000 on state bid. I'd say it may be a little more or close to 70,000 for a new unit. I've looked at used ones. I've been on auctions. Under this COVID, some of the auctions are running where people are paying more for used equipment. They're actually driving the price up. So it puts it at a point where it doesn't make good sense for me to spend $50,000 on a used unit that's several years old and been beat pretty good. So we haven't been lucky enough to come up with anything. I am going to try to buy a couple of new aero boards. They're not that expensive. They're about $10,000 a piece. Just so when we're out working, we can shut lanes off and try to create a little better safety zone. We have, I've rented them the past 2 years, but I think it'd be in our best interest to make a purchase. So that's all I have basically for service.
What is full staff for you?
I think there was 18 at one point there, 19 service workers.
Okay, and besides the last 2 that were just hired, when did they hire for you before then? Like, when was the last time before
I
this?
think about 2 years ago is when we brought in Todd Patagoody.
So you got one more at that time?
I got one, but then I got Todd, and then I had an incident with an employee, So that dropped down one. So then I just picked up 2. So I just have brought really 1 and then 1 new one.
So if we could wave a magic wand, how many more could you use?
All you can give me.
Well, we're not going to get you to 19, but,
Did she transcribe council minutes?
Yeah.
so 2 to 3 more would be ideal.
Whatever,
I mean-
yeah, whatever, definitely we.
I mean, I see these guys out, and, I mean, they're servicing 20-some thousand residents, so
Yeah. Well, we do
it's
a lot.
needed. It's very much needed.
Yeah, these guys do a lot for what we have.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten some equipment last year. I got a paver, and we paved inside our lot. You know, so my plan is this year is to go out and start doing some spot repairs in some areas. I'm gonna hire a contractor to grind them, and then we'll come back with the paver and fix it. But we'll be able to make a bigger impact on our streets this year than we've ever been able to before,
Right.
you know, but.
And I know with all the storms and all the tree damage this past
Yeah, I
has
could
been
use
awful.
a tree crew. I actually could use a tree crew every day,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
you know, so you get a tree crew, you know, usually 2 to 3, and then a sewer crew is 2, you have 5 gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't done anything else in the street or picked up anything.
Right, or cut any grass,
So,
or,
right.
yeah. Okay. All right, thank you.
They do a great job, that's all I can say. And they're always professional, you know, we all see them out
Yeah.
and, you know,
Absolutely.
have a good team going there.
Yeah, they've done a
Absolutely.
good job, without question.
They definitely
Past week
do.
in particular, with the snow.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm on the dead end, so when
Yeah.
I know when I'm getting taken care of, you know, it's a good day.
Yeah.
You know, now that he says that, when they come around the corner, if they would not block me in, it would be great. Because my neighbor usually has to come over and shovel my apron out because they come around my corner and dump all the snow there.
They do all of our aprons, Kathy.
I do
It's
get-
really bad because they come around the corner on me though.
Oh,
I
I
do get a lot
know.
of phone calls asking me to clear the aprons back out.
Yeah, just
So
tell them
depending on
when
the
they drive, just to kind of go up a little bit. and-
I didn't know that I could just call and ask you to come out and clean my apron.
We just listen. And try to explain to them there's nothing we can do.
But you'll listen.
Yeah, we'll listen.
Story of my life.
Director Iaconis, how much does a service employee cost the city?
So most of them are around $27 an hour. If you look on, let's look on the last page for 2020. The overtime was so minimal, so say 64,000, 63,000 is probably a good estimate for somebody who doesn't have a lot of overtime.
What was that number? I'm sorry. I was looking for the,
On the
Director?
back of the handout, it
Oh,
shows,
the handout, okay.
the laborers,
Okay.
and mechanics.
oh, okay.
So, you know, that overtime is included in this amount, but it's roughly around like 64,000
With overtime.
if they're, or even without overtime.
That's not, those are reasonable overtimes and, I mean, that's what you would
That's
expect
nothing.
someone to make in overtime.
Well, no, and I was putting this together to see, went from 134 last year to 39 this year.
That's nothing.
Extremely impressive, give you a lot of credit, great department, they do a great job.
And they're
Dennis
down,
does a great job.
and they're down people, so.
Director Patton, is it like service department overtime, is that, it's not filling in absences for their workers as much as is it weather related and episode related or?
Ours are weather related, pretty much. You know, we do work overtime, you know, when I see the need to, and sometimes in the summer, we'll run some crews for a while. But if we get a big storm or something, yeah, we drive in the other direction. snowstorm, flooding, anything like that, that's where it would really peak at that point.
And so let's go back to staffing. And Renee had brought this up first. Is it possible to budget for an additional service employee this year?
Yes, it is possible. I actually believe we may have one still included in this number. It may have to be adjusted a little bit based on we've spoken about the experience levels and the starting rates, but I believe that there is space for one more person, yes.
Councilwoman?
So the number in in this that you gave us,
Yes.
you've, there's just a bunch of numbers, I'm sorry, so let me make sure I understand.
Yeah.
In the number you gave us, that is for an additional one already.
Yes, but it may, I believe it is at a lower rate. So there may be some tweaking, but it would be a small, very small increase.
Okay, so we could actually then add another one then, since you already budgeted for one, so we could go for two then, or add an
Or a total-
additional one to this.
A total of 2. right?
Yes.
Well,
So what the councilwoman is proposing is adding another 60-some thousand in the budget line plus benefits and everything. Is that doable? Because, you know, and I know that police and fire historically have high overtime, but possibly maybe those numbers can be tweaked a little bit. I mean, we're looking at almost $370,000 budgeted for police overtime this year, and $313,000 for fire, and $40,000 for service. Is it possible that we can adjust those numbers to give this department some staffing? Because they have been understaffed.
For a long
I don't want to
time.
use the word understaffed because our department does such a good job, you would never know.
Right.
Because they hustle.
Exactly.
But we've spent years with police and fire making sure they're at their proper staffing levels. So, and I will open it up to the floor of council to get your thoughts as well. But I would propose adding an additional employee, but I'm going to defer to Councilman Stavoli to make our way around the room.
I would have to agree with that, Director Iaconis. If you can make that happen, it would seem to me that, one, we take away part of the fatigue of the current employees, possibly dropping. I know some of the overtime is weather-related, but it's that fatigue that is absorbed throughout that entire department that opens you up to injury or sickness or whatever. I feel better if we're able to do that, to add another person or two, if that's the number, to service, to help give our residents, the quality of service that they're expecting at this point, and help the department overcome some of the strain that is obviously, it's going to continue on those guys, whether it happens today, tomorrow, or down the road on the next event that happens. So if that's something that can happen, that would be my opinion on that.
Councilman Rounds?
So you're at 13, the budget's planning for 14, we're thinking about adding to going to 15? Is that what I'm understanding?
I'd like to add two.
Or we're
Yeah.
proposing going to 15?
Yes,
Yeah.
as far as the number of employees, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, I'm in favor of that. See that happening?
I will say, and this does make it more palatable and justifiable. So everyone pays your sewer assessment to the county on your property taxes. That all comes back to, it's really the city's money. But Cleveland Water handles some of our sewer jobs. But we have a sewer crew that Dennis runs, nearly every day. And then on a yearly basis, traditionally, we would itemize and bill the city back for what the hours we spent doing the work. We did not have to do that in '20, so that money is still sitting there. Normally, it's between, close to $200,000 that we're billing and receiving back for the work that we're doing. So that money is there. If that helps you feel better about adding the budget for 2 additional employees.
Councilman?
Is there longevity to that
Right.
number, though? We wouldn't want the position to come in 1 year, 2 years, and then be gone. Is there an
No,
expectation
so
that?
this sewer assessment is ongoing.
Okay.
And that money, we don't lose it. It sits in that pot, and I believe it's well over a couple $1 million at this point. Of course, we can't request all the funds out of it, but we can for the work that we do, and we do have a sewer crew running nearly constantly.
Mhm.
So that would cover about 2 salaries.
And,
And we're fortunate to not have to take distribution from it last year.
before we move on, Director, let me think of my question. Okay, it'll come back to me. Councilman, were you done? I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Okay, Councilman Haas?
I don't think there's any question that the positions are needed. From my own personal experience dealing with Dennis's sewer crew, I know how hard they work, and I know you've been understaffed for a number of years. I think it's vital that we do this for both the longevity of the department, but also for the good of the residents of the city. I think it's just really important, and I just want to commend you, Dennis, for doing such an outstanding job also. Your guys are professional, they're on time, they're terrific. No matter what's asked of them, they do it without complaining. Oftentimes in really frigid temperatures, I can't say enough good things. So I believe it's necessary.
Councilwoman?
Believe it or not, I don't have anything to add. I think everybody is,
Make a note
believe
of
that or not. Mark it down. Mark it down.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Danzig?
No, I absolutely agree. We've got the money, we can do it, then it would be great, a great asset to the city.
Okay. You would, Councilman, yes.
Katie, on that sewer fund, can it be used for equipment? Or can it just be used to reimburse the sewer work that?
It cannot be used on equipment,
Okay.
Because we have inquired with them
Okay.
to see about a few purchases in the past, that it can only be used for labor and
Okay.
maybe certain small maintenance type.
Good question.
Thank you.
Anyone have, Director, were you done? He's heard everything he's had to hear.
If you want me to be, I'll be.
I told you.
Quit while you're saying that.
We do.
Dennis, sure
Let's go
ahead.
3.
So I don't think council has anything else, so
No.
thank you, Director.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Oh, good stuff.
You're the big winner tonight.
So I'll make,
Still gotta figure out how to get some of the equipment though.
Where were you purchasing some of the equipment? What fund was that? Some of the trucks? It wasn't the sewer fund? I thought there was one of the funds that you were taken from to,
The stormwater fund.
is that what it
The
was?
stormwater fund's paying for the sweeper.
Okay.
I think
So
we have
it's
one
related
payment
to the
left.
stormwater
Yeah.
then?
I think we have one payment left on that, thankfully.
Okay, so if there's nothing further, we will adjourn the Mayor's Caucus of Monday, February 22nd, 2021 at 8:44 p.m.